Welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, a podcast for senior living leaders who are looking to stay ahead of the curve in the industry. On this show, we feature leaders and innovators in senior living who are pushing the boundaries and creating new, effective services and solutions. And now, let's settle in as host Jennifer Drago connects us with today's guests.
Welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, where we showcase the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of senior living. I'm your host, Jennifer Drago, strategy consultant and CEO of Peak to Profit. Today, our guest is Jill Vitale-Aussem, who is the president and CEO of Christian Living Communities, a Colorado-based not-for-profit serving more than 1,500 older adults and their families through its communities and home care services. For over 25 years, Jill has made changing the culture of nursing homes, assisted living communities, and retirement communities her life's work. As a nursing home administrator, a continuing care retirement community executive director, and a vice president of operations. In each role, Jill has pushed back against the status quo and drove deep cultural transformation in both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. And we're going to talk a lot about culture today, so I'm very excited about this. These efforts not only improved the quality of life for the people who lived and worked in the communities, but led to significant improvements in occupancy, financial, and regulatory outcomes. From 2018 to 2020, Jill led the Eden Alternative, an international nonprofit dedicated to creating quality of life for elders and their care partners wherever they may live. As I mentioned today, Jill is the president and CEO of CLC, Christian Living Communities. Jill has a master's in management and hospitality from Cornell School of Hotel Administration and holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Alfred University. She's a licensed nursing home administrator, a certified assisted living administrator, a reframing aging facilitator, and a fellow with the Leading Age Leadership Academy and Nexus Insights. She's the author of a book that I'm dying to learn more about, Disrupting the Status Quo of Senior Living, A Mind Shift, and that was published by AARP and Health Professions Press in 2019. Welcome, Jill. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Jen. I'm so happy to be with you today.
Yes, thank you. And tell us a little bit more about your organization, if you would.
Sure. So we are 52 years old this year, and we were founded. It started out as a lot of faith-based nonprofits, right? It started out as a single-site nursing home where the folks that were part of the Christian Reformed Church here in Denver saw a need to not just support people from their church, but all elders. And so since that time, we have grown, and we currently have 10 communities throughout the state of Colorado. We have home care services. And you know what's interesting is we have life plan communities with all the levels of living, residential, assisted, skilled nursing. We have some standalone assisted living communities, including a couple of communities where we support people who have Medicaid as their payer source, so low-income elders, which is really, really important to us. Mm-hmm. And then we also manage a 55-plus a community, an active adult community. And, you know, as you mentioned in my very long bio, sorry, I should have cut that down. Our organization also works with other mission and value aligned organizations. So we manage communities for other organizations and for other nonprofit boards and do consulting work. And we do that all over the country. And then we just recently launched Capella Digital Marketing Solutions. We brought all of our digital marketing in-house a couple of years ago because the cost had gotten so high and the service we got just wasn't as customized as we wanted. And we had such great results that now we are working with other nonprofits throughout the country. So we're excited. We're really excited about, you know, we're always focused on how do we not just make Christian living communities better all the time, but how do we impact our field? Mm-hmm. And that's really important to us.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of long-term vision of CLC? Where are you taking this organization? What are your strategic priorities that you're focused on?
Yeah, we have four main areas where we focus our energies. And the first is always, as a nonprofit, you know, our former CEO years ago used to say, nonprofit is a philosophy, not a goal, right? You have to generate a good margin. You have to have financial sustainability. So we're always focused on ensuring that we're creating a really strong financial foundation, operational foundation, like all those things that the clinical, regulatory compliance, if you don't have those things, you're not going to go anywhere. So that's a big part of things. We also have a focus, we call it reimagining the workplace, which is really how do we really do things differently to create a place where people want to come to work and want to stay. Our third area is revolutionizing aging services. And that is all about, like, we're pretty happy with what we've done so far, but how are we really going to continue to move? And we can talk a little bit more about that, our citizenship model forward. And, how are we doing? I really think we have opportunities to do a better job with creating well-being for people living with dementia. And so that's a big focus area for us right now. And then the last area is expanding our mission. As a nonprofit, we want as many people as possible to be able to experience the culture and the support that we provide. And so we're actually going through a very rigorous strategic planning process. We're working with Ryan Frederick, who is a strategist. He also wrote a great book, Right Place, Right Time, for people out there. It's a wonderful book. But, I think it's so easy to get pulled in different directions right now. Well, we should, this organization's doing this, now we should do that. Or, and what this process, it's a 6-month process, so a lot different than getting everybody together for a day and throwing a bunch of stuff on a flip chart and then not really having that rigor that's needed to identify what the right next steps are and what the future is. So we are about 3/4 of the way through that with our members of our board and our leadership team, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. We'll be looking at what are the current gaps. As a nonprofit, it's really important that we are identifying ways we can be of service, and then what are our real growth opportunities. And so our Ryan, our strategy consultant, said, and this is so true, it's just as important to know what you're going to say no to as it is what you're going to say yes to. So we're in that process right now, and I'm really looking forward to that outcome of that work.
Yes. I just want to call attention to a few things that you said that are so important. You've spoken to my heart in a couple of ways, because things that I think are really important. One is actually having a formal strategic planning process and being intentional, but also taking the time necessary to craft where the organization is headed, and how, that vision, as you mentioned, helps you say yes to the right things and also no to the wrong things. And we see a lot of shiny object syndrome in senior living, I think, and especially with all the great tech things that are coming out, right? It's really easy to get sucked into, oh my God, it's kind of sexy, it's like something your residents are going to resonate with, but does it align with your strategic plan? Does it align with your operations? Does it align with your financial strategy? Another thing that you mentioned is financial sustainability and operational discipline as the foundation for everything that we do, and having that in place first and foremost. And I think also that many in senior living can benefit from taking that same kind of approach too. So congratulations and kudos on all the work that you're doing, and can't wait to learn more about what comes out of your strategic planning process. So I understand that Christian Living Communities embraces a culture of we, and I want to learn more about that. You've also been named a World's Best Culture, and you've received that certification from Drive, an organization. We've had Denise Boudreau on our podcast before, so I know a little bit about her passion and her work, but I want to learn more about your intentional focus on culture for your residents and your team members, and the philosophy that really sets your organization apart.
So our mission, our vision, our values really drive everything we do. They're not just things that, hang on a wall or are on our website. And our culture is what makes this organization great. It's what makes people want to live in our communities, which keeps our occupancy well above the averages that you see out there. And it's what really allows us to attract and keep really, really great team members. And so you mentioned our we values. So we have 4 what we call our we values, and the first is we embrace the possibilities, and that is so important because it really is all about this organization. While we're very, very proud of who we are, we have work to do. and we always talk about ourselves as being a learning organization, so we're not done yet. And as individuals, if we are going to really move this organization forward and do better things, then all of us as leaders especially have to model that growth. And so embracing those possibilities is really, really important. We have a we care for each other value, which is really just all about, that's what really matters, is creating a culture of community here. And what we call our citizenship model. We celebrate,
Yeah.
right? Because when the great things happen, the little things matter as much as the big things do, and really seeing people, seeing residents as individuals, seeing team members and family members as unique human beings, and celebrating. And then we belong. We added that new value when we really started talking about how do we really create a culture where everyone knows that they truly belong and are embraced. And so that's with our team members who come from different cultural backgrounds, who have different identities. And it's also about with the people that live in our communities, is too often people can be marginalized and ostracized. We're responsible for a lot of that, I think, as operators. Well, when you live in the nursing home, then, you stay there and you're not part of the community anymore, or assisted living or memory support. And then you also see, unfortunately, when there are people living with dementia or have a walker or a wheelchair in residential living, sometimes there's this people, right, there's that whole definition of ageism, that it's prejudice against our feared future selves. And so, as we age, unless we are really intentional about this, you can get some of that marginalization, and it really does harm. And so those values are everything to us, and they really drive everything that we do here.
And can you tell us more about, a lot of organizations, senior living and beyond, focus on employee engagement. And maybe you measure employee engagement also, but how is culture different, and focusing on culture versus employee engagement? Or do they go hand in hand?
Well, I'm glad we've moved beyond employee satisfaction to at least employee engagement, right?
Yes.
And, I think that's a good point to talk a little bit more about when we look at what citizenship means in our communities. And, you think about this whole model, and I did this myself when I was, coming out of a hotel school. I saw my role as, this is just a big resort or a cruise ship, and I'm going to run it like that. And these are our customers, and these are our staff. And, I used to do I had everybody read the If Disney Ran Your Hospital book, and I did customer service training. And, I've come to realize over time that was not the right answer. And we are not resorts, and we are not hotels. Who wants to really, if you think about it, if you travel a lot, all you want to do is get home, right? And if you stay in a hotel, you're not going to meet the person in the room next door unless, somebody's not going to come knock on your door and say, hey, hi, Jen, it's nice to meet you. If they did, it'd be weird. And this whole idea that we should be treating our team members, like that. I used to say, when you come into work, leave all your problems at home, pretend like you're a cast member, and put on your smile. And I just realized, my gosh, we call ourselves a community, but we're not a community if we're doing those things. And so our citizenship approach is about seeing the people that live in our communities as people who have an opportunity for real influence. Right? And who not only have rights living in our communities, but have responsibilities. Because that whole you're a customer mindset, it does damage. As it creates a sense of entitlement. And it creates this, I'm not going to fix this. I pay to live here, and so you need to fix this problem. And the same thing with our team members, right? And so when you start to say we are a community, we are all in this together. So if you work in our community, you are a part of making this community stronger and better. For residents, it's not just what's in it for me, but I'm going to create positive norms of inclusion and kindness.
Mm.
It's this really cool ecosystem that is created where team members have real meaningful relationships with the residents, and residents look out for our team members. So, a number of years ago, our chief operating officer, Jane Keller, she was the executive director at one of our campuses, and she started realizing what a role residents should be playing in team member retention.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called the Keepers Committee. And it was a very transparent, open, honest conversation about what's going on with recruiting, what's going on with retention. And it led to, so now there's no formal committee because it's part of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you were to come into one of our communities, Jen, and so say you lived there or you were a family member visiting and you started treating one of our team members poorly,
Mm-hmm.
other residents would very kindly pull you aside and say, that's not how we do things here. We care for our team members, and it's our job to make them successful.
Yeah.
And that has had such a huge impact, and our team members truly feel cared for, and they can bring their whole selves to work and bring their passion and bring their, the things that they love and the things that make them unique. And it's really pretty awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I love everything that you've just described. That sounds like an amazing culture. And one of the things, one more off-script question, but related, is one of the things I learned from Denise Boudreau from Drive, who focuses on culture as well, is how it drives, so culture drives so many things in your organization. You already mentioned your occupancy is higher than average. That drives your financials. I imagine your retention rate is very high. What other things do you think are affected by your culture?
I mean, those are the two most measurable outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in our communities where I think that the culture is the most advanced, where there's this deep living of what it means to be a citizen of the community, that's where we have the best retention.
Mm-hmm.
Like 20% turnover, which I want it to be 0, but that's pretty good compared to the average. Regulatory outcomes, that is improved because people are working together to figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things when I was the executive director at one of our communities, what was fascinating to me is that this kind of work and creating community and real relationships and addressing problems when they come up, our workers' comp rates improved.
Oh, wow.
And I remember going to a safety committee meeting, and there had been a bunch of back injuries on one of our neighborhoods. And so I walk into this meeting, and there are, CNAs, our care partners, nurses sitting in the meeting, and they said, we already have this figured out. We realized that we had some communication problems, and so when a CNA was needing to transfer someone, there was some conflict going on. They weren't calling for help, and so they were trying to do things on their own. And what the root cause of this is that we needed to really dig into this conflict and address it, and then come up with better communication. And I was like, where am I? Like that was amazing to me, right? And you don't get that in an institutional culture. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that example. So let's shift a little bit. We mentioned in your intro that you wrote a book called Disrupting the Status Quo of Senior Living, a mind shift. And in it, you confront ageist biases and how they influence senior living. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started, why you wrote this book? What are the personal experiences that led you to focus on combating ageism and disrupting some of the traditional views of senior living?
Even when I first started as a nursing home administrator, one of the first things I did, I had the team move me in as a resident for 24 hours. And it was the most exhausting, depressing 24 hours. And this was at a really nice community. And people said, well, you're not really going to see what happens because everybody knows you're the administrator. And I was like, I'm not trying to see people not doing their jobs. I'm trying to identify what is happening when people are doing their jobs, when they are following this. And this was back when you had get up lists and, and being checked every 2 hours for incontinence and all these things, and being woken up in the morning at 5:30 in the morning to sit in the hallway and wait for breakfast. I realized, like, what in the heck are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing here? So that's always driven me, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I tried to fix it with customer service training. That was back in the day when I was trying to do that. Eventually I went to a certified Eden associate training through the Eden Alternative, and that really shifted my thinking on things. And it was really when I started with this organization, I was the executive director of our Claremont Park community, and we were embarking on a big redevelopment of the campus. And it had been a very segregated community, so independent living, and then you'd go through this big tunnel to the nursing home, and there was a lot of fear and a lot of those poor old people kind of way of looking at things. And as we were building this new campus, we were adding new life plan apartment homes, building a brand new what we call our health suites, which is skilled nursing. And I was brought in. So as you do this physical transformation, okay, Jill, your job is, while we're doing that, to shift the culture. And what I really saw over time is talking with the residents, digging into things as we really started studying things together, as we thought about the Eden Alternative. We really started looking at what do people need for a long and healthy life. Mm-hmm. Really starting to understand ageism and like how prevalent it is. There was this realization of, oh my gosh, what are we doing to people, right? Mm-hmm. What are we doing to people by marginalizing people who, with their aging experience includes dementia, might include frailty, maybe both. What are we doing with this whole model of customer service? Come to this place, put your feet up. Really started to realize that is ageist. Mm-hmm. It's this assumption when we get older that we have nothing left to give, and the best we should expect for is just to be a recipient of things. And how much this model was perpetuating ageism, right? So we're actually creating this situation where these negative stereotypes of aging were continuing on. Mm-hmm. And working together with the residents as we were creating this inclusive culture and studying all those things, I realized that we've got to learn how to be community builders, and that's what we did. And the residents, the residents drove this, mm-hmm. and it is one of the coolest cultures. There's HUD, affordable housing, life plan, apartment homes, skilled nursing, assisted living, and it's inclusive. Nobody cares who has money, who doesn't. People look out for each other. People look out for our team members and vice versa. And it's a community of true growth. And how are we going to work together to make this place stronger and better? And going through that, I was like, there's a book in here. I've got to get this out. And that's why I did that, because I wanted to share with other people in this field, and residents and families. I share a lot of the dumb things that I did and the mistakes I made and what that learning journey was. Mm-hmm. And my whole goal is, if I can help somebody else get on a different path earlier than I did, then it's successful. Mm-hmm. So that's really where it came from, is having seen the power of doing things differently.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So what are some of the practical strategies that you would, if you were speaking on a stage today, that you would say, hey, senior living providers, communities, here's how we can actively work to combat the effects of ageism within their operations and within the interactions with their residents? Where do they start?
Yeah, well, I wish I could just say, here's a simple list of things. This is hard work. Mm-hmm. So here's what I recommend, is first start with yourself and really start to understand we talk a lot about ageism, but really start to understand what it really is and where it exists, right? We've been learning negative things about aging since we were toddlers, mm-hmm. watching Disney movies. And it's everywhere around. I mean, geez, it's everywhere. So becoming really aware ourselves as leaders is absolutely critical. And pushing back against those things, and then understanding how these negative beliefs, limiting beliefs that you might hold, are impacting your decisions and the way you are operating your community, right? Like I had to go, now hold on a minute. If I, it's that belief that when we get older, all we should do is sit back and receive things, that we don't have anything left to give, that led me to think that the hospitality model was the answer. So there's a little bit of uncomfortable, like, ugh, maybe this isn't, the way I should be doing things. There's great books. Dr. Tracy Gendron's book, Ageism Unmasked, is a really great book to read. So start with yourself, and then, there's a saying that all change is linguistic. So when you really want to change things, you've got to have conversations. And if you want to learn how to be a community builder, which is, I think that's what we all need to learn how to be, is build true communities. The best skill that you can have is knowing what questions to ask. So if I was an executive director of a campus or the CEO of an organization or whatever out there, and this is what I did at Claremont Park, would sit down with residents and say, hey, you know what, I've just been thinking a lot about, all these negative things about aging, and really trying to dig into that. Where have you experienced that? Do you have examples of the way people who are older are limited? Do you have beliefs about yourself? So those kinds of questions. And then the other questions that we talked a lot about at Claremont Park when we were doing this work is, what kind of community do we want to be? And that's a super simple question. How do we want people to feel when they live or work in this community? And having conversations and asking that question led team members and residents to say, well, we want this to be a warm, welcoming place. We want people to feel embraced and cared for here. And so it gets people thinking differently. And then you follow up with, well, what are we doing right now that's getting us to that dream that we have of what this community can be, and what's getting in the way of it? It's so simple. Conversations are simple, but it's also very complex, right? This is not easy work, but it's the only way you get real change.
Yeah, I can see that. And I can see that actually asking those questions to your team members, to your residents, and then listening to their responses. I mean, that's really what's shaping not just the change that they want to see, but the culture of hearing them and inclusivity. And you mentioned, residents have rights, but they also have responsibilities. And it seems to all follow now that I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah, and it's what I had to do is stop myself from going, okay, I've heard you now, I'm going to go fix it. The idea is we're going to address this and drive this change together, right? Because that's what happens in community. So it's different. It's a little scary when you're used to just telling everybody what to do and making all the decisions, but outcomes and decisions are much, much better when you engage other people in it.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love it. So can you share an example of an innovative program or initiative that CLC has introduced to empower residents and to combat ageism? Maybe it came out of a conversation like what you've described.
There's not. So I would say programs are usually fleeting. Right? I always say it's just like you go, remember when we used to do that here? Remember when we used to have this? And what you really want to do is completely change everything and make it part of your DNA. But I'll say that some of the things that have come from that at our Claremont Park campus, the more we stopped at the time. We stopped saying, tell me who you were in the past. Which is also ageist, right? Like your value is in who you were before you retired. And saying, what do you want to learn next? How do you want to grow? What's next for you? And we ask people that when they move in now too. And what are you going to bring to this community to make it stronger and better? But when we started asking those questions, I don't even know how it happened, to be honest, but the residents there and team members, they started what we called Claremont College of Creative Life. And there was this whole curriculum that was taught by residents. Other people would attend it. We had students from the University of Denver coming to go to the classes. And it all started because a resident was thinking about growth and learning. And she said, I never graduated from college, and I'm learning so much here. I feel like I should be getting a degree in this. And so we have graduations every year, and that it has changed a little over time, but it still continues to this day. So, that's just one example. There's a gazillion examples. That residents really driving things in our communities, having meaningful roles. If there's an opportunity to put a link in the show notes, there's a great video called I Am from one of our communities with residents talking about, well, here's what my role is in this community, and it's really powerful.
We will absolutely link that. Yeah, that's amazing. And
so there's just a million different things going on, which is great, at all of our communities.
Sure. No, but I thank you for that example. And to your point, programs are fleeting, and we, in all the organizations I used to work at, we would have something come along and we'd be like, oh, here's the flavor of the month, right? And we don't want to do that. It's in the DNA, but giving that example is showing us what things are possible when you really do listen to your residents and your team members. And
the other thing I would just add is, we've done Eden alternative training here at Christian Living Communities it's been about 15 years. Actually, today there's a graduation of, I think it's 30 residents and team members who are graduating today. But that has been very sticky. I kind of brought it to the organization all those years ago. But now I just get an invitation. They're like, hey, we're doing a training. Do you want to come help teach? And so finding those things that are really have staying power in the organization is really important. And that has completely shifted our culture, working with the Eden Alternative.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you're, I know you mentioned that you have kind of trainers in your organization and twice a year, I think you do these training programs, if I'm not mistaken. So what does that bring to your organization?
Yeah, well, it's 3 days. And we've had 4 of our board members who have jobs take time off and go through this 3-day training. And it is really an immersive experience where you really start to dig into the loneliness and helplessness and boredom that really causes suffering for older people. There's 10 Eden Alternative principles. You learn about all those principles. You're doing a lot of work together in groups, and we having residents and team members together in that is unbelievably powerful. And we never require people to go to this training, which, right, like most things, you're like, I'm going to assign you this training and you have to go, and we fill up every time because people want, I know people are seeking out meaning and belonging and something bigger than themselves. And that's why we have nursing assistants and dining services folks, people saying, I want to go to this training, and residents also. So it's really powerful. I really recommend that organization to other senior living communities.
Yeah. What would be your best guidance that you would give to other senior living organizations based on the work and the results you've seen at CLC? It can be about Eden, it can be about culture, it can be whatever you want it to be. But what advice would you give organizations that want to be better?
I would say follow the evidence. So we like to say that we are evidence-based approaches. Really look at what that research is around what we all need to live a long and healthy life. It is not a life of leisure. And if you find the research out there that says it is, send it to me, because I have never seen that. What the research does show is we need meaningful purpose in our lives. Like, that impacts our physical health. Having a reason to get up in the morning. We need to truly belong and be part of a community. And I know we call ourselves communities, but that isn't happening everywhere. We need to continue growing and learning, and we need an age-positive environment, and need to think positively about aging. And if we're using old institutional frameworks about what senior living should be, then we're kind of creating an environment where aging is still seen as all about decline and all about loss versus things that go along with it, right? There's that research that if you believe the negative things about aging, your aging process will be negative.
Yes.
And right, 7.5 years shorter lifespan. So I would say follow all those things and find opportunities and speakers and books that challenge the way you're thinking about things right now. It's human nature to go, I want to read this thing that tells me I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
I do that. That makes me feel good. I just watched that podcast. But seek out those people and opportunities to challenge the way you're thinking about things.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I have to be honest, I shared that our parents are aging earlier before the show, and we had to move my mother-in-law into a senior living, independent living, and then quickly thereafter into assisted living, unfortunately, but because of her decline. And my husband and I have had a lot of conversations over the past couple of weeks about are senior living communities going to be for us in the future? And obviously,
Yeah.
I have one view because I've worked in them, and he's seen them through, different, been able to see those. And I have to say that hearing you describe Christian living communities, and I've never been to any of your communities, but I would love to come someday and see it in action. It actually sounds so much different than any experience I've had as an executive, as a adult child, and creating, you're right, you can move somebody into some place that they call their home, and it can be lovely and beautiful, and they can have great dining and lots of activities, but if they don't feel that warm welcome and that sense of belonging, and folks aren't inviting them in to be part of this community, and you're right, we all call ourselves communities, but are we truly communities? To fight that boredom and that loneliness and help them find their purpose. That sounds like a place that I would enjoy aging, and I'm positive that is the reason for your success. And I'm so happy that you've shared everything that you've shared with us today, because I do want it to be different for our future residents and for my parents going forward. And I know you do too.
I do. And we would love to have you come visit sometime.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So one other thing that we haven't talked about yet, we've talked a lot about how to create belonging in our communities and how to create this great culture that everybody wants to be a part of. What are your thoughts about people who, we hear a lot about people want to age in place and they don't see themselves being part of a community or moving into a senior living community. And as a industry, I know we're creating a lot of programs to help support people as they stay in their homes and truly age in place. What do you think is missing in that equation, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm. Thank you for asking that question, and I'm concerned about this narrative that is out there everywhere. Policymakers, the media, that aging in place is going to be the answer for everyone. And I know that's what a lot of people, the vast majority of people say, I'm going to stay in my house until the day I die. And it can work really well for some people. But I think what's missing is we've got a lot of education to do, because what I don't think people are really thinking about is how you can end up being completely isolated, right? And we know that social isolation is as dangerous as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. It's as dangerous as obesity. People don't plan ahead for that. We've got to choose places to live, whether it's senior living or wherever it is, where you have easy access to other people, where you have opportunity for meaningful purpose in your life, and where you have, you live in a place where you have, if you have mobility issues, that you can really function well. I have seen this in my family, with aunts and uncles and with friends, parents, where people become prisoners in their own homes. Mm-hmm. There's a gerontologist that says people are rotting in place instead of aging in place.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's really important for people to consider is, where are all these people going to come from to come take care of you in your home when you need it, when there's a staffing crisis, and we already, there's a lot of people who need home care who can't get it. So I'd like to see people getting more education on, and again, it might be great to stay in your home, but choosing that place, and that's why that Ryan Frederick book, Right Place, Right Time, is a really great book to read at every age, to make sure that we understand, as Ryan says, the importance of place in our aging journey. It's not just the physical structure. We've got to make sure we have access to all those things we need to live a life that's worth living.
Right, right. Yeah, you've brought up a couple of really good things, and I just want to also point out, you mentioned the staffing shortage that we have with caregivers and such, people being able to provide care not only in facilities like we or communities that we have, but in the home, and that's pervasive and will continue and get worse because of the birth rate, declining. But also I recently interviewed Lisa McCracken, who's the head of research and analytics at NIC, at the National Investment Center for Seniors Housing and Care. And they've done a study recently about the cost of housing and care. When you stay in your own home and you have, you kind of have this dual burden. And we've always made the assumption to this point that that's a less expensive model than moving to a facility-based care for assisted living. And in many cases, in many communities, and it is community-specific because of the cost of living, but in many cases, it's actually less expensive to move to assisted living than it is to stay in your own home. And if they're moving to a CLC assisted living, they're going to get all the benefits that we've talked about of inclusion, belonging, purpose, right? So this could be a real turning point for our industry to recognize that and maybe start shifting some of those aging in place narratives.
And also, right, what else can we be doing? Why do people say, I'm never going to one of those places, right? And so how do we create a want to decision versus a have to decision?
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. And that is going to be an important discussion that we'll need to continue for years to come here. So, because this silver tsunami is not stopping anytime soon, and our staffing issues are not getting any better, really. I mean,
right.
Lots of organizations are doing great things like you, but again, we just have too few people, unfortunately, to care for our seniors. So thank you so much, Jill, for all of your insights today. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and hearing about all the great work that you've done at CLC and about also just your thought leadership in the senior living space. It's really powerful. And so thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. I'm Jennifer Drago, and you've been listening to Senior Living Visionaries podcast, where we explore the cutting-edge ideas and breakthroughs that are shaping the future of senior living. Please subscribe to be notified each time an episode drops at seniorlivingvisionaries.com or on your favorite podcast platform. And I thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Senior Living Visionaries podcast and radio show, where we showcase the leaders and innovators in the industry who are pushing the boundaries and setting the stage for the future in senior living and services. Join us next time as we share the bold ideas and breakthroughs of the industry's most forward-thinking leaders here on Senior Living Visionaries.